What happens when a single rumor dares to cross an unspoken line? In an industry built on illusion, there is one boundary even fame is not meant to touch: family. And when whispers began to blur that line, a story emerged that shook the very foundation of public imagination. Headlines spread fast. Screens lit up. And at the center of it all stood two of Korea's most powerful names, Lee Min-ho and Song Joong Ki, bound together not by choice, but by rumor. It did not begin with confrontation. It began the way most storms do, in the modern era, quietly, digitally, and without permission. This story isn't over. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. We follow the moments and emotions of your favorite K-drama stars. Stay with us. A passing comment. A speculative post. An insinuation repeated enough times to feel real. Online forums buzzed with theories. Timelines were stitched together by strangers, and suddenly a narrative took shape that neither man had authored. A narrative that did not just involve careers or reputations but families. For Lee Min-ho, whose public life has always been carefully guarded, the shift was palpable. He is known not for loud reactions, but for composure. Not for scandal, but for distance. Yet those close to the industry notice something change. Fewer smiles. Sharper silences. The kind of stillness that suggests a boundary has been crossed. Because when rumors stop being about you and start circling the people you love, restraint becomes a choice rather than a reflex. Song Joong Ki, equally scrutinized and equally private in his own way, found himself pulled into a story that refused to respect nuance. His name appeared beside Lee Min-ho's in contexts neither had acknowledged. And as speculation grew louder, so did the pressure to respond, or at least to react. The public never saw a raised voice, never saw a dramatic scene. But that does not mean nothing happened. Industry insiders speak often of private conversations that never reach microphones, of words exchanged behind closed doors where dignity matters more than drama. In such spaces, confrontation does not look like chaos. It looks like clarity. The phrase that spread across headlines, "Respect my family," was never confirmed, never recorded, never attributed to a moment caught on camera. And yet it resonated. Because it sounded like something that would be said when patience runs out. When silence is mistaken for permission. When restraint is mistaken for weakness. What made the story compelling was not the rumor itself, but the reaction it provoked in the audience. Fans divided instantly. Some defended. Some speculated. Some demanded statements. But beneath the noise was a quieter realization. That these were not characters in a drama. These were men whose real lives were being shaped by narratives they did not control. Lee Min-ho has always understood the cost of fame. From early stardom to global recognition, he learned that every step forward casts a longer shadow. Yet those who follow his career closely know one thing. He draws a firm line when it comes to personal boundaries. He rarely explains himself, but when he does, it is deliberate. Song Joong Ki, too, has walked through the aftermath of public scrutiny, learning how quickly admiration can turn invasive. He has seen how stories can escape their origins and take on lives of their own. Which is why the idea of conflict between them felt less like rivalry and more like a collision created by external forces. Because the truth is rarely as dramatic as the rumor. No verified confrontation took place under flashing lights. No public exchange unfolded for entertainment. What existed instead was tension created by speculation, amplified by curiosity, and sustained by silence. And perhaps that is the most uncomfortable part. Silence leaves room for imagination. Imagination creates narratives. Narratives demand heroes and villains. But real life does not always comply. As days passed, the noise eventually softened. New headlines replaced old ones. Attention shifted as it always does. Yet the moment left behind a reminder that lingers beneath the surface of celebrity culture. That fame does not erase humanity. That respect is not optional. And that family remains sacred, even when the world insists on peering in. If anything was confronted, it was not a person. It was a boundary. A quiet assertion that some stories do not belong to the public, no matter how famous the names attached to them. And in an industry fueled by spectacle, that restraint may be the most powerful statement of all. Because sometimes, the strongest response is not the one that makes headlines. It is the one that protects what matters most. And yet, even after the headlines faded, the tension they created did not simply disappear. Because stories like this do not end when the internet moves on. They settle quietly into the collective memory of an industry that understands how fragile reputations can be. For those who live under constant observation, the aftermath is not measured in clicks, but in caution. In the weeks that followed, observers noticed subtle shifts. Public appearances became more deliberate. Interviews more carefully worded. Questions redirected with practiced calm. Not because there was something to hide, but because there was something to protect. When rumors reach a certain intensity, every word becomes a potential spark. And silence becomes a shield. Lee Min-ho did not issue a statement. He did not deny. He did not accuse. He did not explain. And in that restraint, many saw resolve. Those familiar with his history understood the message without needing it spoken aloud. That his career has survived not by feeding speculation, but by outlasting it. That dignity, once lost, is far harder to reclaim than attention. Song Joong Ki followed a similar path. No counter-narrative. No defensive posture. No attempt to rewrite the rumor. Instead, both men allowed time to do what arguments could not. Dilute the noise. Expose the emptiness of speculation. Reveal how quickly outrage loses interest when there is no conflict to consume. But the phrase "respect my family" continued to echo, not because it was confirmed, but because it captured something universally understood. There is a moment in every public figure's life when the line between tolerance and defense becomes clear. When fame stops being a privilege and starts feeling like an intrusion. That moment does not always come with raised voices or dramatic exits. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in private conversations and firm boundaries. Industry veterans recognized this immediately. They spoke not of feud, but of fatigue. Not of rivalry, but of consequence. Rumors may feel harmless to those who spread them, but to those who live inside them, they carry weight. They shape perception. They strain relationships. They touch people who never agreed to be part of the story. Families, partners, children, parents. And that is where the line hardens. In Korean entertainment culture, respect is not a suggestion. It is an expectation. When that expectation is challenged, responses are rarely explosive. They are measured, controlled, almost invisible to the public eye. But they are no less serious for their subtlety. What the audience witnessed was not a clash of egos. It was a reminder that even the most admired figures are not immune to harm. That rumors do not exist in a vacuum. That behind every name trending on a screen is a life unfolding away from the cameras. The story, in the end, was never about Lee Min-ho confronting Song Joong Ki. It was about a system confronting its own excess. About how easily admiration slips into entitlement. About how quickly curiosity turns invasive. About how silence is often mistaken for consent. And perhaps the most telling detail of all is this. Neither man emerged diminished. Their careers continued. Their respect within the industry remained intact. Their public images, if anything, grew steadier. Because when drama is manufactured, it collapses under scrutiny. But when restraint is genuine, it endures. What remains now is not a scandal, but a lesson quietly written between the lines of an overexposed culture. That some stories are not ours to tell. That some boundaries are not meant to be crossed. And that when someone finally says, "Respect my family," it is not a threat. It is a line drawn in calm certainty. A declaration that fame may invite attention, but it does not erase the right to dignity. And in a world addicted to spectacle, that may be the most powerful ending of all.